Hey guys, how you doing today? Real rainy, real drizzly kind of a day today. As you can see, the sky is very cloudy, so I'm taking shelter underneath the trees here, right beside this culvert, I think it is, which has been well graffitied. I actually really love this culvert. It's like an art piece unto itself. It's something. So I found a bit of a refuge here from the drizzling rain, because believe it or not, what I'm holding in my hand is an electronic device, and electronics and rain do not blend very well, right? As we can well imagine. So the title of this piece is "Everyone Should Have Food and Shelter for Free." This is something I've been thinking about a lot these last few days. I did a video about Jordan Peterson's Red Skull connection, right? If you're unfamiliar, an author from Marvel Comics has used Jordan Peterson's ideas and his language for the villain, the Captain America villain, Red Skull, right? Mr. Peterson has reacted to this in a way that I think is actually quite healthy, right? All things considering, right? He's sort of trying to embrace it, right? He's making Hale lobster merchandise, which I think is very clever and cute on his behalf. Still getting a bit drizzled on. I'm just gonna walk in here and like doing everything he can. And the thing is that the name of the video that I made for Jordan Peterson is was actually called Jordan Peterson is a Villain, right? He should be considered a villain. And maybe that's a bit on the nose, because I do think that he's just sort of a person, right? But this has drawn a lot of ire from Petersonians and Peterson fans, right? Who have said to me, how can you say that Jordan Peterson is a villain? And they've tried to argue using Peterson's arguments for why he is not a villain, and in fact his worldview is legitimate and all of this kind of stuff. And I have come through those conversations to realize that there is a linchpin. There is a linchpin that if you are a leftist and you want to start talking to these right-wingers, right, these far-right people, or even centrists, right, the linchpin is everyone should have food and shelter for free. Without exception. No excuses. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Everyone should have food and shelter. And I genuinely think that if you create any argument of any sort, for any reason, against that point, which I call explicitly and implicitly true, objectively true, you are a villain. And this is, in fact, what Jordan Peterson does, right? Jordan Peterson creates a series of arguments for why people should have food and shelter withheld from them, right? So, and it's difficult to pin, and it's difficult to see why he is a villain until you realize that this is, in fact, what he is arguing for. And if you start to ask these Petersonians, well, do you think everyone should have food and shelter? They will begin a long laundry list of reasons for why they feel people should not have food and shelter, right? The most common ones that I receive. Oh, well, I am concerned that people will misuse their productivity, right? i.e., I'm concerned people will be lazy. Okay, concern the first. Let's just put aside the fact that there's no evidence of this. But let's just put that aside. Petersonians are not well renowned for their interest in evidence as climate change denialists, right? But let's just put that aside. Argument two, meaning, right? That, oh, well, food and shelter, right? It's going to put people in this state of listless meandering, right? Where they won't be able to find meaning for themselves. Oh, okay. So let's take both of those arguments and put them together, because they're both kind of the same thing, right? First and foremost, why should everyone get food and shelter for free? Let's actually spell this out, right? Because it's odd to me that it needs to be spelt out. I think a big reason why we don't actually have this conversation about why food and shelter should be provided for free for everybody, and why I believe that to be an implicit and explicit truth. I think the reason it doesn't get discussed that much is because everybody does believe that this is an implicit truth, right? They don't think they need to state it. But we've gotten to a point in the discourse now where things are so bad, or things are so ridiculous, that it does need to be stated. If you're one of these people who dump out of these videos around now, thanks for coming. Please like, please share, please subscribe. We need more leftist voices. We need more people speaking out against these kind of right-wing extremists who are trying to withhold food and shelter from us, right? Thanks for coming. Good luck. We're going to need it. So, why do I believe, or why do I acknowledge that food and shelter should be provided as an implicit right, as something that we simply get? Well, first and foremost, it's built into our society, right? It's not our society, it's built into our genetic code, for God's sakes. It's built into who we are as a people. It's built into the universe that we need food and shelter. This is a universal truth. In theological terms, it is God's will that we need food and shelter, right? And anyone who wants to consider themselves on the side of righteousness, on the side of such a God figure, or if you're not, if you're an atheist, right, if you're a secularist, right, it's a problem to be solved. It's built in to the system that we have. You need food, you need shelter. Those are explicit and implicit truths that it's odd that we need to state, but here we are. And if you are standing there finding reasons for why we should not provide food and shelter for people, right? You are espousing, and it doesn't matter what you're espousing. It doesn't matter if you're talking about meaning. It doesn't matter if you're talking about a concern of productivity. It doesn't matter. You are espousing the ideology of the Red Skull. If you want to withhold food and shelter from people, if you want to defy the will of God, if you want to be an impediment to the solving of this problem, which is, how do we ensure everyone has food and shelter? You are espousing the ideology of the Red Skull. If you are standing there talking about productivity, if you're standing there talking about meaning, right? Well, I have news for you. Your opinion of what is productive or what is meaningful does not supersede a person's implicit and explicit need for food and shelter. And if you believe that your opinion of what is productive or what is meaningful does supersede a person's need for food and shelter, i.e., you believe that you can wedge yourself between someone's pursuit of food and shelter for any reason, including productivity, including meaning, if you believe that you have the right to do that, then I hate to break it to you, you're on the side of the Red Skull. It's an extremely arrogant position to take. It's extremely self-aggrandizing. And in theological terms, you are placing yourself above God. You are saying to the world that, sure, God has required us to have food and shelter, but instead of finishing this, instead of fulfilling this demand that clearly creation has bestowed upon us, instead of fulfilling that, I am going to withhold food and shelter, right? I am going to make sure that the system does not provide. The system, and this is the great evil of the capitalist system, which the Petersonians defend, that it creates, we have all of the food and all of the shelter we need. We have so much food that we're throwing it away. We have 5 empty houses for every homeless person. There's enough food, there's enough shelter. It has created, we've actually solved the problem, right? The problem is not an issue of creating it. We have it. The issue now is that we are confronting this ideology of the Red Skull. We are confronting this ideology which says, my opinion of your value matters more than God's opinion of your value. If you spend any time on this channel, you're going to find out we are each and every one of us divine beings. We are created by a divine energy, right? If you want to do that in secular terms, we are created by quantum energy. We are all quantum beings. We exist in this quantum space where we are all equals because we are created with the same energy. We are created with the same force, right? And we are created and spawned randomly into this world. That's true if you're a theologian or not. Where the demand of the universe, the demand of God is, you need food and shelter. You need it. If you don't get it, you die, right? If you don't get this, you die. And we have erected a system around us which creates all of the food we need, creates all of the shelter we need, which implicitly and explicitly solves these problems, but we withhold them. We withhold them from the populace. That we cede the right to have these things to a group of people who withhold them. Unless we sell ourselves to them in a process that has to be called wage slavery. And I feel very comfortable calling that wage slavery because that's what the emancipators, when they were getting rid of chattel slavery, called it, right? They understood, like we're talking about Abraham Lincoln. We're talking about, go read Cotton is King. Right? They talk about wage slavery explicitly. I'm using the word explicitly and implicitly a lot here, but we are dealing in territory where it's absurd that these things need to be stated, and yet they do. It's absurd that we have a figure like Jordan Peterson who has arisen and has created a following, and yet he doesn't actually understand or even talk about these objective, explicit truths. Everyone needs food. Everyone needs shelter. And everyone should have it. And to create any ideology of any sort to stand against that means that you are espousing the ideology of the Red Skull. And that's simply the truth. And this is why Jordan Peterson is such a difficult figure. Because lots of people think that he is good. Because they have ceded this intellectual ground. They have said in their mind, oh, certainly there must be some kind of position or some kind of ideology that can be taken where the withholding of food and shelter from other people can be justified. And once you cede that ground, as Jordan Peterson has, because he defends the system that withholds food and shelter, once you cede that intellectual ground, then you can talk in the most heroic terms you like. You can speak as a hero. You can stand and say, I'm here to defend truth and freedom and liberty and justice and truth, and tell the truth, clean your room, do all of these good things, right? Help the world, all of this, but make sure you go to work on time, right? Make sure you sell yourself to a class of billionaires that are withholding food and shelter from you, right? And that's what the Petersonians have done. Everyone should have food and shelter. It should be built into the system. It should be built into the structure of our systems. And why? Because God demands it. It's built in. And who are we to defy the will of God? Well, with that grandiose statement, that's the end of this video, you guys. As I said before, you are a divine being. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe, by the way. If you've made it to this point, you've got to subscribe. If you are a divine being living in the world, right? You are living in a society that withholds food and shelter from you that should be given freely, right? And we can discuss the problems that creates, and we can discuss all of that. These are problems to be solved. But what we shouldn't do is create ideological impediments in order to get it. You're beautiful, you're wonderful, you're making excellent decisions. Good luck. we're gonna need it.